Welcome to the Patriot Training YouTube channel. My name is Clay Howell. I am the owner and head firearms instructor of Patriot Training. The purpose of this video is to talk to you about what makes an effective instructor. And that's a deep topic, and we could certainly make videos that lasted hours and hours, if not days, and still not touch everything that makes an effective instructor. But what I would like to do is I would like to boil that all down, and I would like to give you 3 and 3. I'd like to tell you 3 things about one of the worst instructors I had and why these things were counterintuitive to instruction. And I would like to talk to you about 3 things that I think are very important for a good instructor. And we'll start out with some of the normal things that you should expect out of every instructor. You should expect an instructor is going to run a safe line. Safety has absolutely got to be critical. You expect an instructor to teach something that's pertinent, realistic. But, so let's talk about the worst instructor or worst instructors, because I've taken a couple of real stinkers for gun classes, and I've taken some really good gun classes too. And things that stood out to me as things that a good instructor would not do. In one class, I had a really bad instructor, and among the things that this person was doing that just rubbed me the wrong way, he talked about making a gut shot on a coyote at a certain distance. I forget what distance it was. And intentionally not finishing the animal off. And I think that's cruelty to animals. And I think that says a lot more about this person's character or lack thereof than anything. And early on, he did rub me the wrong way, and then he tells this story, and I'm like, this is not good. And not surprisingly, I have been in communication with other people who have had this instructor on the line, and this person's personal character was an issue. So if this person has some serious character flaws going, then that's something that does not help them make a good instructor. The late, great James Yeager used to say that he would never hire somebody that would cheat on his wife, because he would cheat, James, and his students as well. And I think he was saying the same thing with different words. Another example of poor instruction is the instructor barely had a syllabus but would not stick to it. And I'm not talking about discussing something here or there and going off on a little bunny trail. That's part of normal, natural conversation. And golly bum, I think that's been a part of every single class I've ever taken. No, what I'm talking about is, by the end of the day, what you've covered is nothing near what the stated and handed out syllabus was. And what you're doing there is it's another way to show a lack of character. It really is. It's another character issue, because what you're saying is that the syllabus in front of you, whether that be your own syllabus or somebody else's, you're saying that that syllabus is unworthy if you don't stick to it. It's not important. And to say you're going to teach a class but you don't believe in the syllabus, well, that tells me that you're a hot piece of garbage. It really does. So I would say that an instructor, that doesn't believe in what they're teaching, I think that's a problem. I really do. And more so than the character issue, why? Is that material subpar? It's possible. So that will bring me to the third and final example of poor instructorship that I have seen. And it touches on these other two topics, but it goes beyond that. And this individual, we have all had difficulty articulating something at some point in time or another. And I don't judge people for how well they articulate or not. Each of us has our own gifts. But this instructor really, really just was not clear at all in what they were saying. And when the people would do the attempted exercise, the only thing they ever heard was, "You're doing it wrong." Okay, well, what do you want me to do instead? How do I do it right? And that question was never answered. And so I believe that issue is a character issue, like we talked about in the first example. It's a pertinence issue, like we talked about in the second. But the big overwhelming feature of that issue is that it gives an impression of a lack of understanding. And if you don't understand something, how can you teach it? Why would you teach it? And if your only coaching tool is you're doing it wrong, saying that, well, then you're not a good coach either. And it's unfortunate that there are instructors out there, and it's not just the gun world, it's other worlds too, other things that you might learn or do, but that's all they have to go on. And the great Ramsey Dewey on his YouTube channel said error correction is the lowest form of coaching, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. You can't just say somebody's doing it wrong. You got to tell them what they need to do. They need to get an indicator of the positive thing they need to do correctly. And so I think this goes a little bit, in this person's case, that went a little bit beyond a personal character flaw. I think it went a little bit beyond a lack of a belief in the material. And I think it transcended into maybe even just didn't want to be teaching. So why are you doing something you don't want to do? And we've all heard, most of us have a job that the only reason we're there is for the money. Hey, I get that. I really do. But because firearms instruction is voluntary, you really need to want to enjoy firearms and coaching people up in order to be a good firearms instructor. You don't need to hate what you're doing. Don't muddy the water for those of us that enjoy this. So the three positive aspects, three good things. Number one, and this is the late great James Yeager, to reference him again, he made a video several years back where he gave 20 attributes of a tactical response instructor. And one of the attributes is the mindset to always remember what it was like to be a beginner. And I believe that wholeheartedly. We, as firearms instructors, must always keep in mind what it's like to be a beginner. And I think that's why Patriot Training is so good at marketing to and providing classes for the gateway student, I think that's what our purpose in life should be, and it's because we always keep in mind what it's like to be a beginner. A second absolute must for a good instructor is you've got to be willing and able to clearly communicate what it is that we're doing and why. And in our instructor manuals, we have the what, the how, and the why. Tell you what the exercise is, why you're doing it, and how you do it. And if your communication is 100% nonverbal, that's fine. I teach at least one segment of every class. We usually have about 20 to 22 segments in every class, every 2-day class. And I make sure to teach at least one segment without using a single word. And there's an art to that, my friends. There's a real art to that. But it's not all in speaking. Now, we're here on YouTube, and without a doubt, if I did not speak, it would be very difficult for me to get my point across. Could not be done on every single topic, that's for sure. So a Patriot Training instructor, a good instructor, is going to have the ability to communicate to the students, verbally and non-verbally, and is going to desire to increase his or her abilities in those areas. A third thing that I think is an attribute of a good instructor is a good instructor could never conceive of committing negligence. And there are 3 major ways to commit negligence, in my estimation. As an instructor, you can commit negligence by failing to be prepared to render medical aid. As an instructor, you could commit negligence by failing to carry liability insurance. And as an instructor, you could commit negligence by failing to continue your education. And an instructor who is willing to commit negligence in any one of those categories, much less all 3, is not a good instructor. So to be a good instructor, you actively want to make sure you're properly insured. You actively want to make sure you are prepared to render medical aid if somebody needs it, and you are active about keeping continuing education up to date. At the time of the shooting of this video, it's early 2023, and I've already got several classes lined up, paid for this year. I can't wait. And in 2022, I took 4 classes. It might be low to some, it might be high to others, but I had specific reasons why I took each of the 4, and I had specific reasons why I took that many and not more and not less. So every year I try to take different kinds of classes with different training organizations, different instructors, get different opinions. So there is always that. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on how to be an effective instructor. There are many more things we could touch on, and there are a lot of things that are important. And if you want to hear a lot more about that, I would recommend you take my instructor certification class. Nobody at Patriot Training will work as an instructor, as an assistant instructor, or as an RSO until they have taken that class. First and foremost, because you get a really good idea of what I expect. And secondly, you get a really good idea of what expectations you must meet for the students of Patriot Training. So I don't know how you could teach a class unless you know those 2 things backwards and forwards. So that's why we have that class, and I would strongly encourage you to take that. That's all for this topic. I'd like to remind you that you do not have to be a patriot to train, but you do have to train if you want to consider yourself a true patriot. Take care.